song's dedicated to everyone who made it. Yeah. Any test or trial, hopeless situation. Now you have a story. The angels can't sing in glory. You're redeemed. From the hand of the enemy. Yeah. Here we go. Whether it's in the courtroom, fighting in the boardroom, trying to feed your family, or kicked out underneath you. God's able. God is more than able. He can turn the table. So turn and tell your neighbor now it's time for you. Yeah.
Hey guys, welcome to Gwen's daughter. Hope you guys had an amazing week last week. It is the start of a new week, so we can start over, start fresh, and only good things can happen to us this next week. Okay, so this week's episode is going to be different. I am not going to do Spotlight and I'm not going to do interesting news. We're just going to go right ahead and get into the topic discussion of the week. This is really special to me, but also very hard for me to have done. You guys will see in a second. Before we get into the topic, I'm going to play a song that is one of my favorites. I have many favorite songs, but this song is one of my favorites because during the trying and difficult times in my life, this is one of the songs that I listen to that brings me peace and lets me rest in God's peace and His comfort and trust in Him and trust that He knows what He's doing, and to just kind of relax and be like, okay, God's got me, I'm good. So I hope you guys will listen to this song intently, and I hope that it ministers to your spirit.
When you've done all you can, and it seems like it's never enough. And what do you say when your friends turn away and you're all alone? Tell me, what do you give when you're giving your all? Watch the Lord see you through. Yes, after you've done all you can, you just stand. Tell me, how do you handle the guilt of your past? Tell me, how do you deal with the shame? Filled with pain. the Lamb. Prayed and cried, prayed and cried, prayed and cried, prayed and cried, oh my. After you've done all you can, you just stand.
Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground. And after you have done everything to stand, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions, with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. Ephesians 6:10 through 18. And the song that you heard before that was Stand by Donnie McClurkin. Alright guys, so let's get into this topic, which is my story. That's what this episode is all about. I know some of you have been wondering, well, what the heck is Dara going to talk about? And I kind of struggled with this because anytime you have to give your testimony and tell about the struggles and the trials that you've been through, it's hard. And it takes you being vulnerable to do so, and humble in the Holy Spirit. So I wrestled with this, and I'm like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to put my story out there to the world? And yeah, I do. I'm being obedient. And for everyone that knows me, if you met me for more than a day or more than twice, you know that key things about my life. You know that I was raised by my sister, my older sister, from the time I was 7. You at least know that. And I grew up in Maryland. So that, that information is not private. You also know that my mother passed away when I was 8. So that's not private rocket science news. That information is freely given out. I don't even harbor that, hold that in and not tell people. I tell people it's fine. I'm comfortable with doing so because I've healed from that experience of losing my mother and growing up without my mother. So it doesn't bring up any type of pain or hurt to talk about her not being there. But yeah, so I struggled with what parts of my testimony I wanted to share, and then I realized it's not about me sharing with you guys my testimony is not for me, because I've already been through it. I've already lived it. I've learned lessons from it. So now it's time for me to share it with others so that they can hear what God is trying to tell them, and that they can find comfort or be able to feel like, yeah, somebody else has gone through what I'm going through right now, and give them hope and just strengthen their faith so that they can continue to go through what they're going through with a renewed strength, and know that God brought Dara out, God is going to bring me out. So I guess the overall take from my testimony is that no matter how dark, glim, and just unpredictable your life seems, there's always a purpose and a reason why things happen. Like, everyone says everything happens for a reason. It does. And you may not realize or understand what that reason is until years later. And it'll all just make sense to you. And so even in that moment, in that time, your faith and your trust in God has to be activated. And you have to just fall into God and encompass yourself with Him fully. Because if the situation looks chaotic and you don't know what's going to happen, what's coming at you next. So yeah, that's like the gist of the lesson that I've learned from my testimony. And I still learn lessons from this part of my life. But okay, I'm not going to continue to delay. I'm just going to start and tell you guys. So, I'm Dara. Yeah, you know that. I was born and raised for a short period of my life, 7 years of my life, in New Jersey. In various different parts of New Jersey. Both of my parents, my mother and my father. And from my viewpoint as a child, my life was pretty cool. It was pretty fun, I had things that I wanted. I had a good time. My mother was very ill. But she wasn't very ill all the time or necessarily in the beginning of my life. My mother had diabetes. So, for a while, since childhood, I believe. So she had been dealing with diabetes and diabetic symptoms for years. So when I was about 6, I might have been 5, like turning 6. And, my mom got into the season of her just being sick all the time. It probably started when I was 5, because I do remember going to doctor's visits with her and things. And I remember when my mom lost her vision in one eye. So she was going through that and battling all these different diabetic symptoms and just things that happen when you have diabetes. And I watched my mom struggle with this. If you know anything about diabetes, you can lose your sight. My mom had to give herself that insulin, I believe, every day. So yes, my mother had type 2 diabetes, and I'm pretty sure she had to give herself insulin every day and check her blood sugar. I feel like my mother took her blood sugar like every hour, but it was probably like 3 times a day after she ate, like after every meal. Or before and after. I don't really remember what she did. But it felt like she was doing it a lot. And I watched her do this. I thought it was the coolest thing that my mother used to just give herself little shots every day. In her stomach. Well, her abdomen. Wherever the kidney is. I don't know. I don't know all the medical stuff. But anyway. So I watched my mom do that. And that became routine. And normal for me. I like I said before, I watched my mom lose sight in one of her eyes. I watched her battle with arthritis, so she was constantly like in pain in her hands, ankles, and her knees. Her joints were like always hurting, and her feet would swell, and she would be tired a lot. So that's just some of the symptoms and things that she was going through with diabetes. So when I was around, I really do believe first grade, my mother got really sick and she had to go to the hospital. And this was the beginning of probably the most difficult time for me as a child. Because that's when my world just kind of changed so drastically, so quickly. So, pause here, bring my dad into the picture, into the story. So, my dad was an addict, a drug addict. And so he was kind of in and out of my life when I was younger. I remember periods when I would ask my mom, "Where's Daddy? When is he coming back?" And I don't remember the responses I would get, but I do remember noticing that he was gone for long periods of time. And I do remember that at one point it was due to him being a truck driver. So if you know anything about being truck drivers, they're gone for a while. But yeah, so bringing my dad into the picture. My dad was home. My mom was in the hospital. My dad assumed the role of being a daddy and taking care of his child. Yay. As he should. So my dad kind of became like a single father. And I lived with him. He took care of me, took me to school, the whole 9 yards. And we would go see my mom every day after school. And so I'm 6, and I went through all of first grade pretty much with my mother in the hospital. I think she may have come home once, but it was for a very short period of time. So I kind of got used to, it was just me and Dad. And we would go see Mom and kind of like loop her into our lives that we're creating right now. Well, here's when the story kind of gets crazy. I'm visiting my mother in the hospital. My favorite cousin, who's a year younger than me, comes to visit. He's seeing my mom. His dad is my mother's brother. So we're all in the hospital, visiting my mom, hanging out. And my sister's here for the weekend too, so she's seeing Mommy. We're all in the hospital having a good time. I begged my mother to let me go to my uncle's house and spend time with my cousin. We live so far apart, and it was just not fair that I couldn't hang out with him. So my mother gave in. She was like, "Yeah, you can spend the night." So I did. Spent the night at my uncle's house, had a grand old time with my cousin. Come back the next day, my uncle to drop me off, and he takes me home and not to the hospital. Well, when we get to the house, my dad's not there. Nobody's answering the door. So my uncle's like, "Oh, he's probably at the hospital." So we just go to the hospital, which my mom was actually at a hospital that was really close to my house. It was like a 10-minute drive. So it was like literally around the corner. So we went to the hospital. My sister's there, and my dad isn't. So we're like, "Where's my dad?" Couldn't find my dad. Long story short, nobody could find my dad. Nobody knew where he was. Crazy. So decisions have to be made. Dara cannot, just go on into the apartment and just be by herself. And it's a Sunday, so everybody has to go back to normal life. My sister has to go back to Maryland. Nobody has time to be finding Dara's daddy. He needs to, come back, do what he had to do. Well, nobody found him, so this is how I ended up in Maryland. My sister packed my belongings. Some of them, a little bit of them, I don't remember. I didn't pack anything but toys. So, I don't remember this. I remember being upset and my mother telling me, you're going to Maryland with your sister. And I remember being distraught. Like, what do you mean I'm going to Maryland? What does that mean? How long am I going to be there? I don't know. Well, what do you mean you don't know? These are questions that I had. So, packed up the car with my stuff and some of my stuff, and I go to Maryland. So I'm in Maryland. It's still summertime. This is important. But in Maryland, they went to school in August. So it's still summertime for kids in Jersey, but not really in Maryland. In Maryland, it's like a week before school. And so nobody could find my dad. Nobody had heard from him. So my sister is probably in her head like, what the heck do I do? The girl gotta go to school, but she can't go back to Jersey because there's nobody there to take care of her. So I ended up going to school. Much to my surprise and confusion, and I was upset. I did not want to be in Maryland with my sister at all. I just didn't. I can't even tell you the reasons why. I just know that I was not feeling this new situation that I had, because there were no answers for me to get. Like, nobody could explain to me what exactly was happening, because they didn't even know what was really going on for like a good while. So anyway, I go to school, yada yada yada. I'm going back and forth to Jersey to see my mom like every weekend, because it's the only time I get to see her, and you can't keep a child away from their mother for long periods of time, and you can't keep a mother away from their child for long periods of time. It just causes problems. So I'm going to see my mom every weekend in the hospital. Meanwhile, I'm not seeing my dad, and I think somewhere along the way we found out that my dad had gotten arrested and he was locked up. So seeing dad wasn't happening, wasn't going to happen. So living with my sister became like this temporary, permanent position. This situation that was permanent, but it wasn't at the same time. Because we all had this hope that my mother was going to get better. And as soon as she got better and got out of the hospital and was able to take care of me, I was going to take my little hiney right on back to New Jersey and live with my mother, my parents. So that was like the hope of me especially, and my sister. Well, that didn't happen for me. I lived with my sister for all of second grade. Second grade, and kind of got adjusted, and we were doing fine and still going to see my mom every weekend. Kind of like Maryland. I made some friends. It was all good. Get ready to start third grade. I'm excited, going to school, seeing my friends. Back then I loved school. Now I don't. That's neither here nor there. That was a sidebar. So about to start third grade. It is the second day of school. I remember this so vividly. Sister dropped me off at school. For those of you who don't know, I went to DuPont. Shout out to DuPont. But it's the second day of school. Still getting accustomed to new teachers, new classroom, new setup. It's third grade. It's a big deal. We all had heard that third grade was the toughest, grade to be in. Yeah, I got dropped off. I got dropped off probably like 7:45, 8 o'clock. Maybe like 2 or 3 hours into the school day, before lunch. I just know before lunch, it was still morning time. I felt like I was in school for like 2 seconds. My teacher comes over to me and she's like, Dara, pack up your stuff. You're going home. And I'm looking at her all kinds of crazy. Like, what do you mean you're going home? What? I just got here. What are you talking about? So again, your sister's on her way. I'm like, okay, well, I pack up all my stuff. And I'm like, do I need to bring my lunch too? Like, is it that type of I'm going home for the rest of the day? She's like, yeah, take everything. So I'm like, all right, cool. My sister gets there. I go in the office. And I'm like, what's up? Why am I going home? And I could kind of see that she had something to tell me, but she didn't want to tell me right then. So she just said, oh, I'll tell you in the car. You know, just hold on for a second. And I'm like, all right. So we get in the car. Or we get to the car, rather. And I'm a kid, so I can't sit in the front seat. So I'm getting ready to climb into the back seat. And my sister's like, hey, do you want to sit in the front? And I'm like, sure. Okay. This is odd, but, you know, I'm a kid. I'm not going to pass up and sit in the front seat. That's, like, a cool thing. So I'm like, all right, I get in the front seat, close the door, put my seatbelt on. I'm ready to go wherever we're going. And I look at my sister, and I'm like, so, what's up? What you got to tell me? You said you were going to tell me something in the car. What is it? And in hindsight, I can see the sadness and the fear on my sister's face. And the struggle of not knowing how to tell me what she needed to tell me. So she looks at me and probably in the most calm tone that she could, she said exactly this. Mommy died. Immediately, I burst into tears. Like, I'm distraught. She couldn't even get another word out, and I was crying. I felt like somebody came and just took a truck and threw it at my heart, and my chest exploded. And that was the day that my world crashed and burned and flipped upside down, and it was crazy and chaotic. I was 8 years old, and I lost my mother. After spending a year, basically 2 years, hoping and praying that she would get well enough to take care of me and that I could live with her and go back home. And that hope was shattered in that moment. So we dealt with that, buried my mom, and my temporary permanent position situation with living with my sister became indefinite. So, my dear, loving, beautiful sister, I love you so very much, took on the role of mother in all its fullness and responsibility and raised me from that point on to this day. She still raises me to this day. She still bosses me around, still tells me what to do. Not so much tells me what to do, but she does give me advice and all that stuff. She's still my sister mom. From that point on. And we developed this great relationship that was really complicated to like kind of juggle. But we figured it out with God's help. So, of course, I grieved. And I grieved a little bit after my mother died. And in the months after that, maybe a year. And then I kind of, I don't want to say got over it, but my grieving process stopped. And I didn't start to finish my grieving process until I was a teenager. Teenager. And kind of fell apart when I was a teenager. Just dealing with having friends who had their mothers. And I think the biggest thing for me was having friends who had mothers that didn't like their mothers or didn't appreciate their mothers and like kind of like talked bad about their mothers and treated their mothers like crap. And that bothered me because hello, I don't have a mother, and I wish that I could have a mother that I could not like, or say that, oh, my mother gets on my nerves. I wish that I could do those things, and it bothered me that my friends didn't appreciate the value of their mothers. So that was a part of one of the reasons why I was still grieving, and then realizing that certain situations were happening to me in my life as I continued to grow up, that is like, I wish I had my mother here. Like, I want my mom to experience that. And so not only did I not have my mother in my life, I also still did not have my father in my life. So when I say it was just me and my sister, it was just me and my sister. In our little village that, well, not little. The village is not little. The village is huge. That, have been helpful and influential and just there for us over the years. But at home and just dealing with our family situation and dynamic, it was just me and my sister. So we had to get along. We had to figure out how things were going to work out for us, how we were going to play this sister mom role. And I dealt with confusion and chaos and not really knowing where my place was in my own life. Like, I didn't know where to go, like where I belonged. I felt displaced often, and I didn't know that there was a reason why God took my mother away from me so young. I still to this day don't know that reason, but I have confidence and trust in God that He knows what He's doing, and that He took my mother for a specific reason, and I'm okay with that. Because when I look at myself now and I look over my life, I'm okay. Like, I made it just fine. I'm okay. I have made it without my mother. God gave me other women, my sister, her friends, my family members, and my friends' moms to be mothers to me. So I was never without a motherly person in my life. So I'm able to say that I'm okay. I got through that. And the same thing with me not having my father in my life. God sent fatherly figures to me that stepped in and took on that role for me. So I never really felt like I was without my parents or parental figures. But at the same time, I didn't have my parents. And that kind of bothered me. And I didn't really know where I was supposed to fit in my own life, if that even makes sense. So going through all this, I was blessed to have my sister who sought guidance and counsel from people, and most importantly, the Holy Spirit, so that I did go to counseling. I was able to talk about how I was feeling and what I was experiencing, and have someone understand me and help me get through it, help me learn how to channel and cope with the emotions and the things that I was dealing with on my level. And I also was able to develop confidence and self-love. And I think that was very important for me, that I learned to love myself, because I didn't have my parents to kind of like love on me and instill that self-love in me. And I just thought of this. It used to bother me so much. My sister used to tell me that she loved me every single day, like a billion times a day. And she used to hug me and kiss me and all of this stuff. And it used to irritate me because it seemed like so much at the time. I'm like, okay, you're being excessive. You can stop now. Like, I don't need all of this attention and this love. But now I realize that because she did those things, I was able to love myself. I was able to look in the mirror and say, I am loved by others and I love me. Which created confidence and boosted my self-esteem. Whereas people that are on the outside looking in, they're like, you lost your mother, you were raised by your sister, you didn't have no parent, yada yada yada. They're like, what? How could you be so confident? How could you have such high self-esteem when you are going through all this? Like, I can't even imagine. So, as I said before, my life from the outside looking in really seemed like chaos and darkness and just gloomy. Like, just nothing positive could come out of this situation. What positive could come out of a little girl who lost her mother? She was 8 years old. Her father up and disappeared, and he was a drug addict, and he wound up in jail for a while, longer than a child should have to go without their parent. So he wasn't there to step up to the plate and take care of responsibility after the mother died. So now you have an older sister who doesn't have any kids of her own, don't know anything about raising children, who's taking care of her little sister. And, it's like hard for everybody. Whereas, what if I didn't have an older sister? I would have ended up in the foster care system. And I may have been adopted, or I may have been bounced around from home to home. Or I may have been bounced around from family to family members, from different family members. Who knows what could have happened? But God knew what he was doing. And even though I was young and I didn't, when my mother passed, I didn't, have like a personal relationship with God. I knew he existed and I believed in him and I was a Christian. But I didn't fully understand what trusting in God meant. I was a kid. I was just kind of like, okay, this is how it's going to be. This is it. You tell me to go here, I'm going there. That's about all I can do and I can grasp. But I believe that even as young as 8, God gave me a spirit of peace to where I felt like I was going to be okay and that I was okay. And then he gave me somebody that I knew, somebody that already loved me, so that I felt extra safe with them. And I was able to live in the peace that he was giving me. I didn't have to stress about what was going to happen to me. Where was I going to go next? What does it mean that both of my parents are unable to take care of me? Where am I going to go? I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about going to school. If I was going to go to school, I didn't have to worry about if I was going to eat, or am I getting clothes? Do I have enough clothes? These clothes don't fit. Am I getting new clothes? I didn't have to worry about anything. It was like I was a regular child growing up with their own parent. And I'm so grateful to God for that peace and that safety that he provided. And God is so awesome that he gave me the peace and safety a whole year before he took my mother from me. So that when she died, yes, I was upset and I was sad, but it was just established, okay, well, I'm stuck with my sister now. Great. There was nothing wrong with it. I was okay with it. And I think that if I was told that I was going to have to go somewhere else and not be able to stay with my sister, that would have changed the course of my life, and that would have made me uncomfortable and upset. And I probably would have begged to stay with my sister because I was safe there and I was comfortable there, and I knew that I was going to get all of the things that I needed and that I would be loved. So when you're thinking about your life, and you might be in a season where you feel like you don't know what is going to happen, or everywhere you turn you feel like you're getting slapped and knocked around, and things just continue to keep happening to you, trust God. And yes, it is easier said than done, because even though I just told you the story that is just based on trust in God and ultimate faith, I still struggle with trusting with God in certain areas of my life. I'm still learning how to fully trust God. And I know some people are probably like, what? How could you still be learning how to trust God when you had a whole situation where all you could do was trust Him? Well, we're Christians, we're sinners, we're human beings, we're hard-headed. We don't always learn things the first time around. But I'm still learning to trust in God. So this is not something that I mastered and that, I'm like, yeah, I trust God. I do trust God. But I haven't mastered and learned to trust God in every area of my life. So I'm still learning. God is still shaping me. He's still sending me through tests and trials so that I will fully trust Him. But my word to you and my spiritual advice is to trust God, even when it's hard, even when you feel like you don't know how to trust Him, if that makes sense. Like, even when it feels like trusting God will be like the worst thing ever, because sometimes it feels like that, because trusting Him often requires you letting go and just saying, okay, God, the situation in my life is in your hands, and I'm going to stop trying to fix it, or I'm going to stop doing this, and I'm just going to sit and let you handle it and let you take care of it. Or I'm ready to trust you, and I'm ready to do what you asked me to do in this season and struggle in my life. And that is hard to do, because our human sinful nature wants us to just, like, yeah, we can fix it. Let me just sit here and think of multiple ways where I can fix this problem. And guess what? When you try to do it yourself, it doesn't work. It never, ever, 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 ever works. It may look like it might work for a little bit, but then something else happens or it all falls apart. It doesn't work. You cannot fix your problems. You need God. When we try to fix it, it's like putting a Band-Aid on a 3rd-degree burn. What does that do? Put a little Band-Aid on a 3rd-degree burn that you got all the way on your arm, all the way up your arm. You're not helping the situation. You're making it worse. But when we trust God, God takes our burnt arm, puts a little ointment on it, does the full 9 treatment, wraps it up, all of it. He takes care of it. And then we get through the storm and we get through the trials and we come out new. We come out stronger, and we have deeper trust in God, and we have increased our faith, and we're ready to tell people about how God worked in our lives. So, trust Him with everything that you have. Trust in God. And just let Him hold you in the palm of His hand. And when you come out of your season of pruning and pressing and your trials, and you have your lesson that you learn after God brings you out, don't keep it to yourself. That's another thing that I've learned, which is why I'm sharing my testimony with you. The testimonies and the struggles that you go into your life is not for you. It's not for you. Or it's not just for you. It is for you, but sometimes it has nothing to do with you. You went through what you went through, or you're going through what you're going through, so that you can tell somebody else. And you can help them get through what they're going through. Because what they're going through is probably the same thing that you went through. So don't keep it to yourself. If you keep it to yourself, you're doing a disservice to not just yourself, but to God. As Christians, we have to sharpen each other. Iron sharpens iron. And doing so requires us to be vulnerable and humble and just open to what we deal with. Nobody said that this Christian walk would be easy. And for those people who are not Christians, it may look easy from the outside, and we may look happy and joyous all the time. No, it gets hard. We go through all kinds of different things. And don't put us so high on a pedestal that you believe that we don't go through some of the same things that non-Christians go through. We have the same experiences. We are indulging in the same type of sins as they are. And God is constantly working on us. We're not any better than anyone else. So it's important that as Christians, we spread the lessons that we learned from our beating and pressing seasons by God. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I really do hope that me telling my story, or part of my story, and just the loss of my mother and dealing with that, really helps someone. And you don't necessarily have to have lost someone or lost a parent, but that I don't even know how to say it, that you learn to trust in God, that you see that even in your own personal situation, that you can trust in God, and God wants you to trust in Him, and that you will trust in Him. You will release your stronghold of yourself. Release yourself into God and trust in Him, because He knows what He's doing. He really does. Like, He really knows what He's doing. He's not just up there in heaven, flicking things over and like, oh, I wonder what will happen if I do this. Oh, I wonder if I do that. No. He has a plan for everybody's lives, and He knows exactly what He's doing. So just let Him handle it. Trust in Him. Let Him do it. And you'll live a happy life, because you'll have peace. When you trust in God, you have peace. I know this because I've had to learn these lessons of trusting in God. So yes, I hope you guys have learned to trust in God and will put your faith into action, because I shared my testimony with you. It's announcement time. I really don't know why I sang that, but I thought it sounded pretty good. So, announcements this week. As usual, follow me on social media at Gwen's Daughter on Facebook, Gwen's Daughter the podcast on Instagram. Email me at gwensdaughter86@gmail.com. And you know where you guys listen. Back on SoundCloud at Gwen's Daughter and YouTube at Gwen's Daughter. And what else is there? Oh, if you're in New York City at any point in time for like a weekend, a Friday or a Saturday, come hang out with some of my friends from PACE. There's an organization on campus called Christian Fellowship at PACE. I've talked about them a few times in previous podcasts. Well, the school year has begun, so everybody's back in town, and so their Friday meetings are back on track here. They start this Friday at 5 p.m. at the PACE University campus in Manhattan, not the Westchester campus, the campus in the financial district. So yes, they're holding their weekly meeting at 5 p.m., which is basically a Bible study that we have for students on campus and alumni to just come out and fellowship and get into the Word and encourage and sharpen each other at the end of the week. And also on Saturday, there is a service for those people who have not found a church home here in the city, or it's just trying to adjust to the city, whatever the case may be. There's a service also at PACE University, New York City campus on Saturday, starting at 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. And you can come out and we have worship, there's a speaker, and it's just a grand old time. Come hang out with CFP. They are amazing people. They love on people. We love people. We invite you into our family, and we become a family. We're not just friends. We are family. So check that out. If you're ever in the city, if you live here and you need something to do and you just want to be around good Christian people, come hang out. You don't have to be a Christian to hang out with us. No, we're not closed off to non-Christians or other faiths. It's totally fine. You can come hang out with us. We'll still love on you. We'll still hang out with you. We'll still feed you. All of the above. So yes, hang out with CFP, Christian Fellowship at PACE. And that's all the announcements that I have for this week. Of course, check me out every first and third Sunday of the month. And you will hear from me on the first Sunday of October. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day. The quote of the day is brought to you by the Bible. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight."